suppose ultimately Noki was my way of dealing with the craziness, you know what I mean? Because I was in all the underground raves and Shoreditch and all that kind of stuff where you had to find out where it was, you know what I mean? Because somebody broke into a warehouse back in the days when they were all empty, and it'd be like chit-chat and little and large parties and all that kind of stuff, and Roger Sweetback was doing his nights and stuff like that. So they weren't easy to get into, so you had to know the chat. That's why I think I put the mask on in the end, because I was already known, and I was put into that famous arena of facially, aware.
Dr. Noki, how are you?
Hello, sir. How are you doing?
Is it still Doctor now? Or
Well,
just
it's
Noki?
Doctor, it's Noki. It's all kinds of different variations on the theme. But yeah, no, Doctor's Noki. That's how I first started the sustainability, House of Sustainability through the NHS. So
NHS standing for?
Noki House of Sustainability, but since the pandemic, I've kind of changed it to the NHST, which is the Noki House of Sustainable Textiles, just to try and take, applaud what the NHS did for the world.
For sure.
Or for Britain.
Yeah, that's right.
And the mask and all the rest of it. So I kind of had to rejig it so it wasn't so kind of blatant.
Blatant,
Because back then it was blatant because the brand was broken. And I would say, let's bring it into the Dr. Noki's NHS and we'll fix it and regenerate it just like they fix our bodies, and our minds.
And, okay, so before because we've had these conversations, we go a long way back, and we've had many junctures where we've had the opportunity to talk in depth for a little subplot as to what Noki is all about. Give the people a breakdown of what Noki represents.
Probably dealing with my mental health back in the 90s.
Okay.
You open the pub, the Bricklayer's Arms, at the weekends with Fee Duran, and she's DJing, I'm running the bar, and the coolest of the cool come to a singular pub in Shoreditch, and it turns into a monster, and then regentrification happens in Shoreditch, and Shoreditch is what it is now.
So you were the fashion face of Shoreditch for what time?
Well, I was just a face, and became more of a face because I was a bar manager. Do you know what I mean? Of the pub, So I suppose.
Which pub was that?
The Bricklayer's Arms.
The Bricklayer's Arms.
Street,
Right,
in the corner. And it was just an old-fashioned pub, and it turned into the clubhouse of what Days Confused crew and all that kind of stuff, ID and all the rest of it would come to it.
So you were seeing street culture in all of its guises?
90s supreme, yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
That's
I mean,
amazing.
my first job was at the Blue Note.
Wow.
Very early 90s, I moved into my warehouse. It was 25 quid a week,
Right. So this was Metalhead's era.
It's Metalhead's era, yeah, and dusted Mowax. Yeah.
Wow, Mowax.
So you're talking very early experimental incubation of a street style,
Yeah, and rave. The
rave,
conversion of rave.
hardcore, everything, from bass bins being developed from Kevlars and all the rest of it to cope with the new generation of impulses, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's I even questioned my brain because I'd come from Scottish rave, acid house and all the rest of it. When I came down and I was listening to drum and bass, I was like, what the fuck?
So how did this work with your mental health? Because this sounds like one hell of a journey.
Yeah,
of discovery.
I go on about the toxic rave. Eventually, if you submit to the rave, it can get you. It can bite you big. So
did you succumb to the?
Yeah, I drink and I was always a spliffer. I never did the hards. So because they didn't agree with me. Do you know what I mean? So I was a lucky diverter of my toxicity. Do you know what I mean? And it was just alcohol and spliff and tobacco, if you're going to break it down to toxicity and addictions and that kind of stuff. I tried them, but they were never for me, But I've got many friends that tried them until they're dead, do you know what I mean? Or they're shaking,
Wow.
They're in a mental institution. So
yeah, which happens even to this day.
Exactly. I moved into Shoreditch, when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah. Okay, so prime.
Exactly. And I was gagging on it because it was, I'd moved from Scotland where you've got suppression going on, do you know what I mean? You can only push style and,
so
thinking so far, and you come to London, you let your gob open, do you know what I mean? And you sort of want to talk and discuss and feel and evolve and create, So I suppose ultimately Noki was my way of dealing with the craziness, you know what I mean? Because I was in all the underground raves and Shoreditch and all that kind of stuff where you had to find out where it was, you know what I mean? Because somebody broke into a warehouse back in the days when they were all empty, and it'd be like chit-chat and little and large parties and all that kind of stuff, and Roger Sweetback was doing his nights and stuff like that. So they weren't easy to get into, so you had to know the chat. That's why I think I put the mask on in the end, because I was already known, and I was put into that famous arena of facially, aware. And
you know what's crazy. Sorry to cut, because I want to keep to a level of narrative so that people understand the gravity of what you've brought to the culture as a whole. Because, you slipstreamed into the fashion conscious, but I see you more than that. I think a lot of people on the street, he's a face, people, but moreover, you're almost like you're the anti-fashion in a sense.
Well, I'm anti-fashion, but I'm totally pro-style.
Yeah.
And I think the two have been hijacked into one another and messed up. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I'm rave culture, so I'm baggies, branding, rucksacks, hoodies, all that kind of stuff, and that kind of silhouette, So that's where, when you look at Noki style, you can see a lot of it going on. And, there was the DIY thing, and, so for me, starting to chop up the brand and creating my battle collages, where I was like creating the Noki zines, I was creating wearable.
Explain the battle collages and Noki zines.
Well, the battle is that we are subjected to buying, these labels to be cool, So we battle with which ones to wear, And I think in the end, my mental health was like, I need the brand to be more for me. So I would start chopping up Nike, Adidas and Fila tracksuits and wearing Nike, Adidas, Fila tracksuits.
And mash them up by hand.
And do them, custom build them myself. Bit like, a car customizer goes to, the scrap yards, I go to the rag yards. And I'll pluck out my bonnets and my, my wheels and my, my chassis, and I just start to put different bits together, and just overlock them together and create new silhouettes. And
overlock being the knitting machines.
Yeah, it's like for me, when I first started on a sewing machine and hand sewing stuff together, because I didn't have that money. I mean, they were back then in the 90s, they were very expensive, but they're kind of affordable now. So it took me a long time to be able to afford an overlocker. So I was always having to use, my other ways. So there was a lot of hand sewing, a lot of just using an old Bernina from a school that I got, because they used to have these old metal Berninas, and it was a great brand in itself, metal compared to plastic, all that kind of stuff. So they were able to take the depths of my layers, of sticking different textiles together and sewing them together and creating these, let's say, battle collages.
Before anyone else was?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it was just an instinct, because I've always cut things up and because I come from Scotland, and I come from a lineage of, my dad was a bit of a dandy in his time. Do you know what I mean? And like he died this year, so sort of rest in peace.
Absolutely, rest in peace. Yes.
But he was kind of person that would see the 60s going on, and it was all tight suits, and so he would take his suit to the tailor and just say, "Can you take it in for me?" So he would wear it to the the clubs in Aberdeen, and people go,
cool, yeah.
"Where did you get the tight spy movie suit?" And he's like, and he didn't tell them, because it was really obvious. You just take it to your tailor and get him to take it in, So I suppose maybe I've got that gene pool of like knowing how to create a solution for yourself. But I suppose in the end, my mental health grew and grew and grew, because I realised I was sort of dealing with the kind of like ferocity of the mashup that was going on. And
the mashup
of drinking, drugs and branding and going to the right club and, like all that kind of intensity of what the rave is, getting mashed up in the rave, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I suppose I directed that physical thing into a creative thing and mashed up the brands and created these battle collages and the Noki zines, and you know what I mean? And it was a way of going, I'm paralleling the problem rather than ignoring it. I was facing it head on with a creative kind of intention. And luckily, I had people like Yuko from the Pineal Eye, which was like a high-end London-based, Japanese kind of concept store, and they would take my Noki zines, and they would take the T-shirts as pages of the zine, and then I would sew them together and create the zines, so they were wearable, and they were selling them to princesses, super rich people. Do you know what I mean?
So you'd have like
Ibiza.
So just for context, so these zines, these mashups. So you would, and sticking with the subject of royalty and how you would that level of attention that you brought because of your artwork. You would have a Primark T-shirt with a Nike arm, with a Reebok back, and a hoodie from XYZ.
Yeah, and I'd cut up a rucksack and slip that in as well, as you get the pockets dangling off the sew seams. You know what I mean? So you'd have a zip pocket from a bit of tech, and yeah, I mean it was really good fun, because you know, secondhand in Brick Lane was the third place that rag ended up, because all the other places, the premier places, were Soho or Camden, you know what I mean, or Portobello and all that kind of stuff. So all the crap went to...
And vintage wasn't really the thing back then.
Vintage was just a way of life rather than a kind of an elevation of life, you know.
Yeah.
It was... So Brick Lane rag yards were full of mashed up pieces, you know, and so I'd find the Nike t-shirt or the Adidas t-shirt and it would have a stain on it, because that's why it was chucked to Brick Lane, because nobody would buy it in the premier places, and I would stick my stencils over it, the stain, and cover the stain up, you know what I mean, but it would say Adidas, but I would stick a Nike stencil over the stain, so Nike and Adidas were starting to battle collage together.
Wow.
You know, and that kind of stuff, and then I would stick a Feel It arm on it and all that kind of stuff, so all this battle collage thing. I suppose it was me battling my visual intake of what I was involved in.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But whilst also that political slant, which harks back to graffiti, street art, and things that you were bearing witness to.
Yeah, I mean, I was surrounded by top boys, you know, like coming at it, you know what I mean? I suppose, you know, I had to battle top boys that were tagging the bar. And I go, you need to stop tagging the bar, because my boss is raging.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? And you'll get barred. Do you want to be barred? Don't speak to me like that, because top boys are top boys, you know what I mean? I was like, I have to speak to you like this because you're not listening. Your tag is blatant. She knows who you are, because she's, you know, she'll find out, because she's also establishment of Shoreditch. You know what I mean? So why don't you just go to the toilet and smash the toilet? She doesn't go in there.
She don't go
She
in
go in there. Do you know what I mean? So that's why Shoreditch toilets became the kind of free-for-all, ripped apart, you know, torn apart kind of visually when you walk into them, which I think added to any tourist, we used to call them, coming in, we'd go, la, 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 walk into the top and go, whoa. You know what I mean? And that, it kind of, that's what it gave it the edge, you know what I mean? And then obviously it spread out, you know. And Shoreditch, I was in Shoreditch where it was just NF graffiti. It was horrible.
And just old buildings that were never used.
Exactly. Hoardings were, you know, old adverts, all that kind of stuff, maybe a bit of pop concert, that kind of stuff. So now it's completely different. You know? It's like it's the new Soho, it's the new Camden, it's the new Portobello. Yeah. And I love having a perspective of what that place was like before that accolade was given to it, because it was just a borough, you know, it was just a postcode that was emptied, you know what I mean? And big up, you know, Hackney Council for changing the live work situation. That's how I got my warehouse.
Yes, that's right.
So, right time, perfect storm.
Yes,
you know,
for sure.
But it's been rough, because I realised, because I started it was my mental health, I could never sell out to fashion.
On core principle.
You know, to just turn these silhouettes I've been creating through cutting up and doing battle collages.
But your battle cry resonated and continues to resonate with some of the biggest names in music and fashion, like, you know, your Neomi Campbells, your Christina Aguilaras, your YungBluds, your Neneh Cherrys, big up Neneh, and all these, you know, all these, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that comes with just being, you know, they don't give out their essence to unoriginal thought processes, you know, especially that, because with all those people you know, especially the music industry, that still hold on to their underground. Do you know what I mean? Their kind of like core values. So I'm very lucky to have their, you know, their endorsement. You know what I mean? To wear a piece, you know, wear a battle collage.
I guess it's an endorsement. It's a cosign, but ultimately it's what you stand for, where the integrity lies, and that political point of view that you want to get across. That transcends industry, doesn't it?
Well, it's a solution. Noki is a solution. It works with the problem, which is consumerism and rag piles and, you know, the leftovers and all that kind of stuff, and recycling and the custom build is just an age-old authentic kind of like movement. You know what I mean? Where, you know, car builders were taking Maseratis and Bentleys and all the rest of it and mashing them together and creating these hybrids where
the rat rods and all that.
Rods. Yeah, exactly. So you knew that those designers of the Bentleys and were looking at it going, whoa, I never thought my original idea could turn into that, you know?
But how do you manage, right? I've got a few questions that have always plagued me. Right, how do you manage the idea from 0 to 100 where, because you've got to have an extreme degree of talent to know when something would fit on a Kylie Minogue, where something that a kid you may be tutoring and showing them, okay, this is what you do. How do you prevent it looking like a whole heap of mess?
That comes from just having an instinctive feel for shape and form, which is why I'm not a fashion designer. I just see myself as a collagist. So when you look at collage, it takes the original, already created imagery and words and all the rest of it, and somebody somewhere cuts it up and turns it into another sort of form of visual identity. And I suppose I slipstream into that. I just know where that sleeve will cut off when I do it. And I grew up, big up my brother. And my dad, because he told my brother to take me to the punk clubs.
Punk clubs,
when
wow.
When I was 13.
Well, they are the antithesis of DIY.
Yeah, exactly. So and having seen that at the age of 13 and then hitting the rave acid house scene in '88, I was already battle torn in the punk scene and the psychobilly scene, and then hitting into the rave scene, which was a beautiful scene at the beginning because it was all the misfits, the ones that were the early diagnosed, dyslexics and ADHDs and all the rest of it. They can when I hit, acid house, I was like, wow, why do I absolutely totally identify with this noise? And my hands are starting to box and do these, French and Saunders sketches, you know what I mean? But back then it was like what you did, and your mate was going, and you were like, whoa, you were doing all this stuff that was not...
Tribal.
Yeah, it was a tribal bounce, so having transcended from the punk scene into the acid house scene and then hitting Edinburgh as an art... And so I was troubled at school. Lots of trouble at school, but I drew myself out of the village, and it was a village called Ellen, and I used to call it hell on earth. You know what I mean? So hell on earth. So it was.
What village isn't to a young?
Exactly. So I'm glad I did, because it was a baptism of fire to stand up for myself, to get a grip, not let me fail. So I suppose my whole life has been, looking at injustice and trying to work out where it's coming from, and normally it comes from pain. So I've been in the pain zone, and I suppose Noki was my way of working out what was pain and what was pleasure.
At this point, I want to big up Dave Baby.
Yes.
And it's a perfect juncture to get into the culture of it all.
House of Beauty and Culture.
Absolutely. And this was a pioneering fashion moment. You're one of the last few people that I know from a street culture level, of course, and K1 as well, big up K1, graffiti writer, that knew Judy and, very similar to myself, got that cosign from somebody that, that's seen it all, done it all, and he was really, he really, pigeoned you into...
Yeah, he championed me. He took, and if you ever knew Judy Blame, he didn't like...
Yes.
He only loved.
Yes.
There was no in between bit. And even when he loved you, he would tell you he fucking hated you. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, he would always be re-questioning and questioning. He was a great questioner. You know what I mean? He would, he would always see something before it would happen. Do you know what I mean? And all his collages, his jewellery collages, are all
incredible.
And the craft that went into them, and so
and you collaborated on a number of pieces.
We did the mask that Gaga wore during her what was that program in America? The
Letterman.
No, she did the American Horror.
Oh wow.
So there was a lot of things. She was wearing a mask with that, with all the Judy Blame's safety pins all over it, that kind of stuff. So
incredible.
So that was I think it was photographed by Nick Knight. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And, it was that kind of level.
Serious levels.
So it was an old Mickey Mouse T-shirt. Do you know what I mean? I just.
I remember it well. Yeah.
That kind of thing, and so it's nice to see somebody who's kind of at that level, just wearing a bit of old T-shirt from I found in the street. Do you know what I mean? That kind of vibe, and it resonates. It resonates. Something can be done with nothing.
So on that note, and this is more about the process. We'll get into the reasons why we're talking about this process in depth a little bit later. But when you're there in front of your overlocker, and you're sewing something in. Now, okay, there's the visibility in your mind of what you have to do, and ultimately what the end goal is, which arguably never really ends. No. Because once you've designed it, there's still other things. But how do you manage? How do you stitch by stitch, sew by sew? how do you keep in your mind not just the value of the end product, but how do you keep that attitude that ultimately is, metaphorically stitched within every single aspect of what you do, because that drive has to be there for you to be of a sustained period doing a piece.
Well, as I say, I grew up with graffiti boys and all the rest of it, and I was always in awe of how they went into yards, you know what I mean, and stuck between two trains. Would they do a piece when it pulled away? It was perfectly formed, like how does somebody not make the A look a bit smaller, the D did
what's the method in that
how
sort
the
of
hell
thing?
does that happen? So I was always on that, and I was only ever what spray cans to me were, and graffiti was somebody else's vibe, you know what I mean. Loved it, grew up with it, Aberdeen was kind of was big into it because it had American influence through the oil industry. So it was I grew up around spray can and all that kind of stuff, art, and I had the book and I was in awe of it, and I copied it and I drew it, you know what I mean? But I was never able to do it myself, So I was always in awe of top boys, doing their pieces, and I thought, how do I do my version of this culture I'm immersed in, do you know what I mean? So my version was smashing over the brand, you know what I mean? So I would smash over, the ident of the brand with my brand, you know what I mean? I'd tag it and all that kind of stuff and turn it upside down, so I would flip it, or subvert it that way, cut through it, add, stitch through, half and halves, you know what I mean? And so which represent that kind of, see, when you see street beef going on, do you know what I mean? When you see one bomb over the top of another bomb, these things I took into perspective and just did it because, the brand is top. There's top brands, you know what I mean? And then there's low brands. Low brands try to sometimes coming in out of fashion because they're low and they need to elevate, and they become cool because they are low, That,
so the narrative is what drove you. Because when
trying to do something unique and different, that's what it was, you know what I mean? Because for me, I would, the culture of hip hop and the culture of through graffiti, graffitiing on trains was poor into rich, So I suppose, in a sense, rag is seen as poor. So I wanted to elevate it into the rich.
Oh, so good.
That kind of idea. But at the same time, if somebody wore a zine, they would get on the train, but they wouldn't stop at the station. They'd walk through the borough, into the club, into the after party, through the rave, into the after party, and sit mashed up at an after party, and they would still be wearing the zine. Okay, so fanzines is basically what I'm trying to say.
Fanzine being the old school magazines,
yes, exactly. Street-led and cultural-led ones. Yeah,
but also some of what you do, and this is only an observation. I mean, if you're not watching and listening, you're wearing a mask. Purposefully, in the same essence as graffiti and anonymity.
Yeah, was all that. There was
but the layers in which you've got, even in this now, when you say zine, I think magazines torn and ripped, but then I also think of flyers on walls, street flyers, which are layered because they keep on plastering more and more and more. That it's something that's inherent in our street culture DNA anyway, and what you're doing is repurposing it for fashion in a very ad hoc, aggressive way.
Well, it's the custom build. I mean, it's just about dealing with that level of wanting to be seen, and being up there, and I suppose I just elevate the brand by custom building it and keep it up there. I don't let it, I create the landfill drop, not the landfill up. So, that kind of drop to me is the sustainable way forward for the custom build, which is what I'm here to bring to art market.
Yes, that's right. And at this point, yes.
Art Arkade.
Art Arkade, yes. Well, and art market, because what we're doing here, and this is something that we've been, foraging forward with for the last couple of weeks now, is this concept of the NESTT, which is a new project that you're pioneering, and we're going to be getting involved with, Arts Arkade. Tell us more about that.
Well, as you say, Arts Arkade has got the word fashion above it, and as you say, you wanted to bring me in as a kind of ambassador for that word, So as I say, I'm proposed that we bring the art of the custom build, which brings along sustainability and creativity, and allows me to do what I started thinking about during COVID, which was a legacy project called the Noki NESTT, which was the Noki Education of Sustainable Textiles and Technology. And that was basically to empower my students that I've already been teaching through all the universities is how to build my famous builds. So show them where to cut.
Wow.
How to cut and how to reassemble and custom build into these silhouettes. So it's a bit like saying McDonald's hamburgers, you know what I mean? I show the kids how to create Noki builds and Noki hamburgers, you know what I mean? That's that perfect build, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And it gives them an idea that then it empowers them to then go, oh, but I've got all that in my wardrobe. Yeah, well, now I've shown you how to cut.
Get it out your wardrobe.
Get it out your wardrobe, cut it up, hand stitch if you have to, glue it, staple it, whatever you can. But as long as you give them the kind of like DNA, you know, the direct Noki action of how to build a specific look that Kylie has worn, that Neomi Campbell has worn, you know, like Neneh Cherry, you know, these things, you can be them, but do it your way sustainably. And put all your consumerism to good use, and also re-endorphin yourself from the original buzz you got from buying it, then the empty legacy of it being chucked into your wardrobe, bring it back out and re-custom build it and get a buzz from it, because when you start wearing it into the club scene again, people are like, oh, where'd you get that from?
Where'd you get that from? Yeah.
Where's that from?
And
So
it's the gold star of mashup excellence.
Gold standard is, for me, to custom build is the gold standard of sustainability.
Because that you're making something that's more valuable than the designers which you may have purchased your products from.
Well, it's gold standard in the sense that it's the purest way you can sustain textiles.
Yeah.
You can create sustainability in a fashion context, you know what I mean, where you've not added to the problem of, say, Mother Earth growing, producing, slave labouring, making, producing, all that kind of
and
stuff.
finding landfill for these items,
creating landfill.
with someone else's dreams, someone else's purchases, someone else's moments.
Yeah. Well, yeah, somebody else's purchase is somebody else's nightmare, because we all have to get, everything we buy has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So Noki is very much about elevating the first purchase. You know what I mean? But you know, I'm about, like, you know, your first life purchase. You know, it's kind of like I do second life, third life, fourth life, fifth life. It's a bit like if you saw somebody using the first iPhone, you'd be like, mate, that's the first iPhone. I'm about the new iPhone, about the new iPhone, about the new iPhone,
love
new
it.
custom. So the second life, third life, fourth life. You know what I mean? So, and you're wearing it. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you're wearing it with pride. You're wearing it with style. You're wearing it with a new way forward. New way, 21st century way forward. You
Yeah.
know? And it works as a solution to the landfill problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it kind of works hand in hand with consumerism, because, you know, I'm not stupid enough to go, if we all custom build and it stopped. No, we need one needs the other. You know, I need the rag to do the custom build.
Yeah, so it's not an out on brands as such.
No, not at all.
Because you've collaborated with.
No, I mean,
many
my stuff
brands.
looks exciting because there's bits of the brand in it.
Yeah.
You know, and because, as I say, my, you know, like Adidas and Fila tracksuits and my zines are all full of the brands and the rest of it. It encompasses it. But the fashion industry the designers of the fashion industry have spotted that. That's why you get your collabs. You
Yeah.
know. But mine's is like unofficial collab.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'm always thinking, well, did I need permission? Because, you know, I looked into it and it's, you know, dead copyright. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's there. I'm not bootlegging. You know, I'm not disrespecting by bootlegging and becoming the industry again.
The Dapper Dan of whatever.
Yeah, I mean, oh no, Dapper Dan, you've got to highly respect. Because
Absolutely.
He fucked over back and then got fucked over.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I think he was doing it for more kind of like elevation of a culture that was really suppressed.
Yeah,
You
and
know
what I'm suggesting by saying that is what you are able to do is you're able to collage these brands that all have distinct looks and styles, but then when you repurpose it, it actually becomes Noki brand.
Well, it's like, you know, Ramos.
Ramos.
I stand on his shoulders because I look at his work and I go, wow. I mean,
Yeah.
that man created some insane battle collages.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Dapper Dan, those early sort of, you know, the varsity jackets he did for like Salt and Pepper, it was like, you know, stuff that is now you see in Primark.
Yeah, you see him. You see it anyway.
Yeah.
It kind of
Yeah. It's on Louis
Pop
Vuitton.
eats
You know,
itself,
it's
as a famous
everywhere,
band
do you know
once
what I mean?
said.
But it's where it came from. You know, I mean, that's why I've always kept Noki quite underground. Do you know what I mean? Because it has to stay there, and it has to come from the second-hand, you know, second life textiles. You know, it has to be built because that's its power.
Yeah, for sure. Does that come with a heavy heart in the sense that you're that pro independence underground? You know, it's what you hold on your sleeve. Therefore, some battles you can't roll into liberally because of the stance that you take?
Well, my stance is my style. So the style is the collage. So it's just how I collage it, you know, because a lot of the kids are now doing it.
Yeah, they are.
You know, and it's great to see and it's amazing, you know what I mean? But I'm always trying to say, look, my style, I always want my style to look like I am killing the zombie. You know, I'm a zombie killer, not I've been attacked by the zombie, you know? So I suppose I'm always pushing to my collages to be as perfect can be. I'm always chasing the perfect collage, you know?
Wow.
So it's always, so it looks slick. Yeah. It looks directional. It looks like, yeah, you've literally, you watch the zombie movies and there's those that are in trouble and they're literally hanging on by dear life, and then there's a troop of them come through and they're like, you know, they've got it down, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. That's where I always push towards, because I want to be about survival. And the solution for Noki is survival, and trying to do the best with what we've got, you know.
And I guess that's what drives, as mentioned earlier, that drives every stitch, every moment, it's
happiness in every stitch, exactly. Yeah. It's love and peace in every stitch, you know what I mean? That makes, because I know when I unravel it all, I'm like, put it on my muse, it's like, yeah, you know. And then, you know, I've got special techniques where I do internal shapeshifters and all the rest of it, which can pull it in and make it sexier and baggy it out. Just all little techniques like that, which you learn over time how to, you know, adapt to a customer, because they might want it slightly tight and sexy. You know what I mean? Some like it big and baggy. You know what I mean? So I've created techniques where, you know, as I said, internal shapeshifters are like you tie them and make them, you know, adapt to the person's.
So you could have like almost like a corset. You can pull that about and stretch and tight.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So it's and that came from having to deal with sort of certain people going, yeah, but could you make it a bit tighter? You know, I'm thinking, okay, and it's not. So they're telling you what they want, not them accepting what you've been given. You know, giving them. So it's kind of like taking your ego back a bit and stepping back and go, okay, and then they go, can that be tighter? And then just going in, pulling the shapeshifters. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, what? You know, so I'm always trying to put happiness and you know, smile on people's faces, and try and give them the best collage, the best zine, the best look
for what they want,
and what they need for their market.
Because I've seen, Mark. I mean, I've seen some of the most contemporary, cutting-edge suits that you've made, and then, as the mask by design suggests, you can go to the full extreme. How much compromise are you happy with when someone asks something? Well,
that comes with energy and vibe. If you don't vibe with the person, it lasts as long as it lasts.
Yeah.
It can only, because a lot of the time, if you're talking about superstars, you know, they're in their Chanels and they're in their Fendis, you know what I mean, and that takes them away. They don't want my raw. You know, they're just too raw because they're being given a rail of, you know what I mean? And it all depends on the stylist and, you know, the art direction of where that person's going. And for me, I mean, I'm looking for, you know, for the next star that wants to just wear their custom build full stop. So that's what they wear all the time.
Like
so
an FKA Twigs or something.
Yes, exactly. Something like that just wears that.
MIA or something.
And not just one, I want a few. Do you know what I mean? So they're battle collaging with each other, do you know what I mean? And then they become, you know, like a look. You know what I mean? That's supported. And it's not about. It's a style that is supported by their fame. You know, and that fame projects out sustainability in the style, and other fans can then go, "I'm going to make what they're wearing."
Yeah, identity,
and become that by doing it themselves and turning up at the gigs and all that kind of stuff in that style. And that's a landfill up.
Yeah,
you know, up as in uplifting. Do you know what I mean? Not in. Ultimately, it's a landfill drop. You know what I mean? It's like they've used up all the stuff that's in their wardrobe to emulate their star, you know, their famous person.
But it's admirable. Not a lot of people can walk away from anything in life and say, you know, I have a legacy, because a lot of people don't have the guts to hold on to what their core values are.
That comes down to my own personal mental health. I know how I suffer if I'm going in the wrong direction, because my conversation's being gaslit, or you know, I came from manipulation. You know, my whole life I've been manipulated and played with and gaslit and fucked over, and that includes back in the bricklayers when people were trying to find out where the rave was, and then you know hardcore, like when my staff were being given bags of E to sell. I mean, and all of a sudden I've got a drug war in my pub because one staff member's doing it and the other staff, you know what I mean? It's like, no, I only want them to sit, and you're like, whoa, what? And this is all coming out.
I'm going to pull a pint.
Yeah, exactly. And we, you know, so there's, I've been in that dark space where you are literally out of control. Your circus is out of control.
So control
and the
is a
lions
thing.
are like jumping. You know
so control is a thing. Self-control.
Yeah. Control, and that's probably why I have a specific style, because I'm in the zone where I am disrespecting a designed thing, and I am putting scissors in. I am literally cutting it. I could kill it, or I could regenerate it. You know, so I suppose I have to respect where I put my scissors in.
Yeah.
And I have to respect that energy where I take a deep breath and I'm not panicking. I stopped panicking when I did that.
God, can you imagine it?
So I'm zen in the kind of custom build, and that's the stuff I want to hand over to the NESTT.
Because not a lot of people would happily cut into...
No. I get fear factors beyond. I mean, I did an installation at the V&A. It was called Cut the Brand. And there was a rail of T-shirts in the middle of an empty gallery. And invited guests were along, and they all thought they were going to buy these T-shirts, thinking they were customised by me, but they were raw. They were not untouched. I hadn't even customised them. They were just there and could see, and I was listening to the screech of the rail, you know, the hangers on the rail, and little discussions of, I could wear that with that, and wow, I can't believe that T-shirt.
Brilliant, wow.
And all this conversations going on, consumerist conversations of like identity and how they would fit it into their life, and I'm wondering how much it is, because there was no price tags on anything. So we take it to the pay desk, and then I would just hand them a great big pair of like tailor shears, and I'd say, it's not for sale, it's for cutting, and they'd go, I don't want to cut it because they've already invested. The next minute is it's laid down and they have to cut it into ribbons, and I would stretch those ribbons into yarn, and then I would turn that into plaiting and knitting and all. I'd have a team of knitters and crocheters, and
That's incredible. What a great concept.
And then at the end there was these new affirmations, and in it was all Nike, Adidas, Fila, you know, AC/DC and all that kind of stuff in it, because you could, if you know your brands that well, you'd know that was the bit from that and the A, and you know, so people were like micromanaging their obsession into this new generation, and it was sustainably built, but it was about the customer's expectations of consumerism and changing the whole direction of that identity. A, they weren't allowed to buy it. C, they had to cut it, and they had to then go, and arguments kicked off. I don't want to do that. How dare you make me? Because they were supporting their galvanization of the moment at the rail. You know, they had already invested hardcore into how they wanted to build their style around what they'd found.
It speaks a lot for the brand and how people the followership of a brand, and how to the point of purchase people are enchanted.
I was that.
Yeah.
I lived by it. You know, as I say, I grew up in the 80s, and I was one of the first Adidas, Nike, Fila trainer, hoodie, rucksacky kids that were identified as wrong-ins, because we looked a certain way and we weren't, you know, our tracksuits were the studded leather jacket, our long hair was the spiky hair, because, you know, our trainers were the DM, you know. The transferal of style is that deep in my DNA that I know that I stood out from the crowd by my look, and that look's now become normal. You know what I mean? So I want to keep that buzz going. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I battle collage. I make these versions of what they can't give us. Yeah. You know, they can try, but they can't quite give us that freedom, because they gave us freedom. You know, like to wear sportswear in the rave gave us total freedom to rave, because it was sweaty. You know,
and bear in mind, sportswear wasn't really the status quo until rave, really, and hip hop. No,
it was you know, it was kind of like there was the mentality of us lot were kind of like what, you know, the rich wore, because they could have, you know, their tennis courts and their sailing and all that kind of stuff. It was all that rich leisure time stuff. You know what I mean?
Yacht rock.
Yeah, so we basically emulated that, but did it in our gutter street way, you know. Yeah. And that felt like a kind of piss take. Yeah. But I suppose, you know, with what I've tried to do was like to sort of like bring that original idea of what it was, which was a freedom. It was an expression. It was a subversion. It was an idea about youth culture. You know, youth culture being free, you know, to experiment and put two fingers up to the last generation.
Yeah, but what a narrative through the guise of upcycling and fashion and doing the subversive to empower the people.
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose because my mental health grew, and I was like, because you had to be strong to do the bricklayers. You had to be strong to even go into Shoreditch. You had to be strong. You know what I mean? There was there's something in me which is always on the precipice. You know, like, you know, we talk about AI now, and I always think I'm very adventurously immature. You know, I'm willing to step over the edge, and hopefully something will catch me, because I know there's safety somewhere. I'm not scared of the bully. I always step forward, because I grew up with bullies, you know what I mean? And, you know, I realised that if I'd stepped back, they'd won. If I stepped forward, they went like that, you know? And then if they hit me, I'd go for it.
Go
do you
for
know
it,
what I mean?
yeah.
So when you physically are in that space, your synapses, something changes in you, and you gain a strength about how to protect yourself. And I suppose the custom build protected me, you know, because I only wear the custom build, you know, so it's and I get the coolest kids sometimes going, where are they from, mate? Do you know what I mean? And you're like, you know, and I'm 53 now, you know what I mean? I'm not in my 20s, but you've got the 20s, so I feel like I've come back, and I'm getting a buzz from the youngins, which you can see by their style they don't compliment. You know what I mean? You know those ones?
Yeah, of course,
They're not the ones that are
you see them all the time.
Yeah, that are like literally thinking they're on it, like I was, you know what I mean? So when you get that kind of a buzz, just by pushing your own particular style, which is original, authentic to me, you know, I know that the nest is something that I can give to, you know, a generation, you know what I mean, of new custom build designers.
Yeah.
And from that, it will incubate new ideas, because once you've given the rules, they will want to break them. You know what I mean? So their scissors will go in a different angle. You know,
And you're constantly learning then as well.
The colour collages, because what I pick is my version of the colours I like, and the textiles I like. They're going to start collaging them in different ways, because that's. But you know, it's just giving them agency, agency to think out of the box, go into no man's land, follow that path when all the war is going on about them. Do you know what I mean?
What's the worst that could happen? That's all that.
Well, exactly.
You know,
if it comes from, you know, if it was already sitting dormant in your wardrobe and you fuck it up, you fuck it up. Do you know what I mean? It's. But through the nest, I will guarantee that you won't fuck it up. You know
so
what I mean?
on that note, the nest is coming very soon, courtesy of King Noki, the pioneer. The pioneer.
Thank you.
Before we sign off, give us one morsel, because there's going to be a load. But what's your most fondest moment in your career up to date? Well, what is the thing that you're like? You could put on your bedroom wall and say, I'm proud of that.
Well, there was definitely a moment where I was asked to do a project with Nick Knight, and it was called Bring 'Em By, and I was given Neomi Campbell as my muse. So I built a zine for her, and she was famously late and all that kind of stuff. And this is back, I mean, this is talking about nearly 20 years ago, do you know what I mean? And so I built a zine, and she was famously late. And then Val Garland, you know, the famous makeup artist, she was like, she put me aside, and then we had it on. And it looked great. It was a Nirvana long
Yeah, that's
sleeve.
right, yeah.
My Nana had just died, so I changed Nirvana into Dead Nana, R.I.P.
Wow, incredible.
So that was my narrative to build the zine, you know what I mean? So that was the information that was in that zine at that time, you know what I mean? You could read, you know what I mean? As a truth to community, you know, and it was my community. So Dead Nana, she had it on, and Val was like, babes, come on, we've got to sort this out. And I went, oh, I'm getting told off by Val.
Yeah.
What's she famous for? And I was like, being a model. I went, yes, the body. And I went, yeah. She went, so do you want to show some more body in that piece? 'Cause it's a bit like covering. And I was like, what do you mean? She went, well, I'll distract her and you get cutting. And I went, what, while she's wearing it? She went, yeah, because I'm doing her makeup. And I was like, so I had to literally get my scissors out and cut it while
she was doing the makeup?
while she was wearing it.
That's amazing.
So I did my shredding technique on it. And I was sitting there going, and the scissors went in, and I was thinking, Naomi Campbell's skin is that far away from my scissors. If I
shearing away at the
if I fuck up now, and I didn't. And I was like, right, so any imposter syndrome, any worry about who or what or thing I've created or my mental health is that I'm calm, I'm zen, I'm cutting, and I'm creating. And then when she stood up with her makeup, it just shredded out, and you could see her arms, her legs, her bits. And when she was in Nick Knight's wind machine, it was all.
It was iconic. That was an iconic wear.
It was a moment. It was a sort of proper moment, and that was high pressure.
Yeah.
Super high pressure that I dealt with. So I must have gone back to when I first started the Bricklayers, and the pressure was, I didn't know that this was going to turn into a nightmare. You know what I mean? So there was a zen moment, and then it did, and then I must have like balanced out and become. But there's been quite a lot. I mean, Judy Blame once, she said to me, "I've got one label in this world I love, and I'm really pissed off with you." And I went, "Why?" And he went, "Because your NHS label, you've just given it a second." And I went, "Really?" And he went, "That's as much as I'm saying." You know what I mean? And I was like, wow, because the Nemeth label from the House of Beauty and Culture
for sure.
was a beautiful weaved label, but it was backwards, so he'd flipped it, so it was the back of the label read it the right way around, so he flipped it, so it was all the weave and it was, for me, I've always, that is the ultimate label that I've ever loved, is the Nemeth label,
Wow.
And, and that man was the king of deconstruction.
Yeah, for real.
And John Moore, and hence Dave Baby with his woodwork and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
And Richard Torrey and all that with the knitwear. So, to be given that kind of like pep talk, hard pep talk, it wasn't, I thought I was being told off at the same time I was like, hard talk. Those little moments, made me sort of go, right, my mental health stabilising. It must be doing something right. I must be on the right positive energy level. And I suppose that made me feel like I'd maybe slipstreamed into a parallel universe that was comfortable for me, where I was able to endorse, because we all endorse everything. Our whole lives we will be endorsing something, and we give ourselves over to. And for me, I suppose it was, my battle collages and making sense of my own addictions.
What an incredible couple of accounts there. Well, if it's any value, I've always endorsed you, JJ, my brother. Fantastic.
Been a buzz, so
always inspiring.
Arts Arkade, here we go.
Let's fucking
fashion
have it.
show, fashion week.
Let's get it, and more information will lead in due course, people. Noki tells you,
rejection breeds reinvention.
Exactly, and things and stuff like that. More power for 2024, 2025. Street Culture Podcast. I like that. Big shout out to Noki. Thank you so much for joining us, brother.
Pleasure.
Let the games begin. All right, listen, you stay lucky, people. Till next time. Easy.